Good evening and welcome to SEC Live 37 from yours truly, Jetson Johnson, Tucker Harlan, and Andrew Miller, as we are joined by Caleb Jarreau from the Daily Times to discuss as to whether the 2026 Tennessee Volunteers football season is riding on the Joey Aguilar ruling, and much, much more, all right here on SEC at the Voice of College Football. Let me tell you something, folks, you're going to be in for a wild ride and a good time for a long time, as we are only 200 days until kickoff of week 0 of the 2026 college football season, but we're 205 days until the start of week 1 of the 2026 college football season. How you doing tonight, gentlemen?
Doing well. Doing well. Very glad to be here. Andrew's Bulldogs and my Vols have quite the basketball game to be played after this. I'm sure he's really looking forward to it.
I don't acknowledge that team right now.
At least you get Josh Hubbard. You know he's still on the court.
Yeah. It's baseball season in Starkville, and even for as big as baseball is at State, it takes a lot for me to be one of the ones who says it's baseball season. It's baseball season. So.
Oh man, it's like the moment we mentioned Mississippi State men's basketball, Andrew's just kind of like Michael DeSanto on Grand Theft Auto 5 with the magnificent line of, "You forget 1,000 things every day. Make sure this is one of them." Oh man, and of course we will start off this discussion with the elephant in the room, so to speak, the Joey Aguilar ruling that's coming up, and we just want to talk a little bit about that. And Caleb, what's been your thought process through this whole thing?
Yeah, it's been interesting because obviously, at first with this thing, he joined on to Diego Pavia's federal lawsuit in the Middle District of Tennessee. And there's, 36 to 40 players on there, depending on how many stay on there. And it was like, okay, you can't blame Joey for trying to get the extra year. If all these other players are going to do it, might as well join in the lawsuit and see what happens. Sometime over the last few weeks, that flipped to, he's getting really serious about this because he's going into Knox County Court and making it a local case following suit of, Trinidad Chambliss of Ole Miss, which I'm sure Andrew's a big fan of. And then obviously Charles Bediako for the Alabama Crimson Tide men's basketball team, which clearly Jackson is a fan of. But those two cases going to the local level have kind of set a precedent for, other guys to try that. And I think that's where it flipped from Joey just taking a shot in the dark and seeing what happens in the court case with Diego Pavia and some other guys versus actually trying to come back and making an effort. And I think you see that with the local case. And I think it brings it to a state level as well, which will get interesting because the NCAA is kind of a weird body where they're subject to both federal courts and state courts because they operate in every state. And obviously they operate at the federal level and nationally as well. So we'll see what happens on Friday with that. And as we've seen, especially with the Bediako case, decisions can come quick or they can take a couple days after the hearing. So timeline-wise, luckily, like you said, there's 200 days till football season to figure this out. But I know Joey Aguilar's camp really wants a decision, yay or nay, pretty soon.
I guess one thing I wanted to ask on that note with the timeline, Caleb, it is in regard to Joey Aguilar's football future because if this doesn't go well for him, he's got the NFL draft to think about. Is that something that the judge has in mind at all with this decision? We know the courts like to behave on their own, but are they thinking about his future at the end of the day, even if they don't want to give him that eligibility?
Yeah, I think that is part of it. I know whenever you read the court documents, Joey Aguilar's camp has requested, whether it's yes or whether it's no, that they are quick with that, Tucker. And I think you see too, like when you go to the Knox County level compared to the federal level in Nashville, there's a lot less court cases to go around. So these judges and chancellors, as they're called in this court, are genuinely less busy, and that allows them to see these cases quicker. And that's why you saw that temporary restraining order, which Joey Aguilar got approved, which was 15 days, got approved so quickly is because he was able, the judge in this case, or the chancellor was able to look at it and evaluate that. Whereas in the case with the Nashville and the federal court, it's been really slow rolled. And that's to the NCAA's benefit, yes, but also just because they're busy. And you got to think of everything that's rolling through a federal court, especially for the judges there that have to be appointed by presidents. It takes a while. And There's criminal cases going through there, and then there's obviously, Joey Aguilar's case. So I think it's easy to get lost in the shuffle at the federal level. Obviously, the local level, there's a little less stuff going on. But to your point, they do request in the case that it's yes or no. Could they know quickly, because it's bearing on his future now. And I think, too, when you look at the arguments of, Joey Aguilar's camp has to prove irreparable harm will be done if they don't get this preliminary injunction, they also have to prove when that timeline is. So for them, it's, by the start of football season. If he's denied eligibility, they're harming him for the football season. So does it help? Maybe a little bit. But at the end of the day, like, you are subject to scheduling and what's going on at the court level. I mean, look at Charles Bediaco's case. He got an extra week of eligibility because there was a snowstorm and the NCAA's attorneys couldn't leave Nashville. So there's always stuff that's going to happen that could benefit or harm either party.
How likely does this feel one way or another? And I guess that's always tough to judge with any of these cases. But like, as you mentioned, this all stems off the Pavia case from a season ago. Do JUCO years need to count against the players' eligibility at the FBS level because of the earning potential that they have and the impact on that? Are we looking at this from the timeline the perspective that with what they did with Pavia, that set a precedent that's what you have to do moving forward? Or do we think this is changing now and somebody's just going to kind of, the phrase I used a lot the last time we talked about this was, just put a foot down and say, we're not going to continue handing out extra years?
Yeah, it's an interesting point because, Aguilar was playing on that extra Pavia year this past season from the original court case and that waiver. So you could go either way. Like, to your point, the judge could say, well, if you added an extra year for these guys, maybe you should add another one to just get rid of JUCO rules altogether. Or he could say, well, maybe 1 year is enough. Or he could look at it and say it's violating Tennessee state law, but then the federal court could turn on the Pavia case and say, well, he's not violating federal law. So then Aguilar is eligible, but these other 40 guys aren't who were in that case. So it's really, truthfully, a crapshoot at this point for where it could go. I mean, you look at the Bediaco case, and he ended up getting his eligibility revoked, but that's in Alabama. We're talking about a different judge in a different state with different attorneys in this case. Very talented attorneys. Joey Aguilar went out and got, an attorney that had represented Donald Trump before and also represented the state of Tennessee against the NCAA. So it really depends. And it's interesting because since it is state law, they're saying that, the NCAA enforcing those JUCO rules means that Joey Aguilar's, they're violating his rights under the Tennessee trade law. So in theory, other athletes in the state of Tennessee could sue and get extra years if they're eligible, but then athletes in the state of Alabama or the state of, Mississippi or other states could fail based on those state laws. So it really is interesting. And that's why it's hard to predict something like this, to your point, Andrew, is it's really hyper-focused on, this individual case. The NCAA has had success enforcing its 5-year limit where you can play 4 seasons in 5 years. Obviously, Joey is out of that since he was a 2019 high school graduate. But if the judge rules that JUCO years don't count, then those 5 years don't matter anyway. So he could look at that 2 different ways as well. So there's a lot of ways this could go. Honestly, I don't lean either way. I mean, I thought the Bediaco case was one you can kind of look at, but then that's also looking at professional to college and different things there. Obviously, when you get a temporary restraining order, it bodes well for your preliminary injunction hearing because you're getting the nod from the chancellor or the judge that your arguments do have merit. In this case with Joey Aguilar, he was issued that temporary restraining order before the NCAA ever put in a statement on the case. So he hadn't even heard the NCAA's arguments yet, but knew that. So all that's telling me is, Joey Aguilar's argument has merits, and there's quality stuff in that argument that the judge thinks could lean that way, but we haven't heard what the NCAA's argument is. We saw the judge in Alabama strike down that Bediaco was seeking education. He also struck down some of the money arguments there. So I'll be curious to see what happens with the Aguilar case. But at the end of the day, for everybody involved, I think they want it over as quick as possible. So Aguilar, if it fails, can go on to the draft and Tennessee can move on. Or if it passes, they can get him on the field permanently and practicing. So all in all, it's a really hyper-focused case. There's not a lot of precedent for it, and we'll have to see what the arguments they make on Friday are and how this chancellor reacts to those.
Well, one thing to really, this little advice for the lawyers of Aguilar is like this, what I kind of suggested for the Chambliss case last night when I talked with Caleb Sailors is make sure to reference Case Keenum, the Case Keenum situation from 2010, where, he was hurt in week 2 against UTEP on September 10th of 2010, and then just kind of like go, hey, NCAA set the precedent where it's like, if you got like an exception, you can use it. Like, just kind of like use that in your favor. If you're Tennessee, you do that. If you want to keep Aguilar for 2026.
What does the impact look like for Tennessee one way or another here? I would assume if they can get Aguilar back, they're going to want him back. So what do the expectations look like for this program if he's under center or if they're having to go to one of the younger guys that's already on the roster?
Well, and to your point too, Andrew, in the court filings, they say if he is eligible, they have a roster spot for him, and they're willing to pay him in the range of $2 million for NILs, according to the court records. So if he is eligible, I mean, Tennessee will take him back. Finished last year with 3,500 yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 picks. He was really efficient. There's some end of the year concerns there, but you can also have the conversation of maybe he was hurt with that tumor that was reported by some NFL reporters that he had to have surgery on. Obviously, it didn't end the season well, but there were flashes there that showed he was a capable quarterback. The real question is, what does Tennessee do if he isn't eligible? And I think the answer is 5-star George McIntyre. He's the guy who's been in the building a couple of years. It's been reported that, the new nutritionist and the new strength and conditioning staff has been spending a lot of time with him to make sure that he can put on weight and put on muscle. I mean, you look at the transition Fernando Mendoza made for Indiana. That's the same staff from Indiana that's now at Tennessee, and they want to do that to George McIntyre. You still also have, I think McIntyre might be a 4-star, but you have true 5-star Faison Brandon out of Carolina, where that's a guy who's going to be a true freshman who earned a lot of NIL money through his recruitment, was really good in high school, and Tennessee is really, excited about what he can be and getting him on campus. And then obviously you get the transfer out of the portal, Ryan Staub, who kind of seems to be the guy who would be jockeying for maybe that quarterback 2 position. It doesn't seem like he's in the running as a starter, and that's something he was under the impression of coming in. But between Faison Brandon and George McIntyre, you've got 2 highly ranked quarterbacks, 2 very fairly compensated quarterbacks, and 2 guys who, Tennessee recruited and expecting them to compete. And I think when you look at George McIntyre, to me, feels like the stereotypical Josh Heupel quarterback, tall, lanky, kind of the Nico Iamaleava build, even though you don't want to talk about Nico in Knoxville anymore. But he seems like a guy who can compete, and he's a winner, and he's got a good football legacy. Faison Brandon is a winner at the high school level, mobile guy, and can really sling it. So I think both of those guys would be competing for the spot, and it would be, you'd have to roll with a young guy. And truthfully, under Josh Heupel, Tennessee hasn't had a lot of quarterback success with high school guys. I mean, you look at who they started in Josh Heupel's time. It was Joe Milton. It was Hendon Hooker. And then you had Nico for a year. Yes, you went to the playoff, but I think the defense was to thank more for that than Nico. And last year you had Joey Aguilar. So it would put Josh Heupel back in the spotlight of having a young quarterback and trying to develop one of his high school guys if Joey Aguilar is ruled ineligible. And you're going to pair that with a new defensive scheme and a new defensive staff. So you'd have questions on both sides of the ball. Joey, if he comes back, gives you some constant there at the quarterback position, a lot of answers, a leader, can run your offense. I think they want him to get better in the RPO game, kind of reading. They think, maybe he ran some times when he should have passed, and sometimes he would get very pass happy whenever they needed to be more run. But arm-wise and talent-wise, besides a couple bad decisions, I mean, you look at some of his picks, I can think of 3 probably off the top of my head that his receiver or tight end let him down. So there were some bad decisions in there for sure, especially against, in a game like Oklahoma. But overall, I think Tennessee was pleased with what Joey Aguilar gave them this season and wouldn't mind having it for another year.
Go ahead, Tucker.
Oh, I didn't have anything. You go ahead, Andrew.
Well, I was just going to ask off that. You kind of mentioned some of the changes defensively with the new staff and some new players stepping in. If Aguilar is back, setting schematic shift and coaching changes aside, are the pieces in place for this to be a really good team, at least from a roster standpoint?
I do think so. On the offensive side of the ball, quarterback to me is really your biggest question mark. I think on the offensive line, you're returning guys like Wendell Moe and Sam Pendleton, David Sanders, a guy who made a lot of waves as a freshman on the offensive line. You look in the backfield, you got a guy like Deshaun Bishop returning, who was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Again, some of these guys don't jump off the page, like a Deshaun Bishop out of Carnes High School in Knoxville, but you have a constant there. You know what you're going to get. And I think, honestly, in today's college football, knowing what you're going to get out of a guy is big. And then you look at your wide receiver core. You got Braylon Staley, Mike Matthews, guys like Ra Jackson and Travis Smith return as freshmen coming in for their sophomore year. So you've got a really young wide receiver core, but guys that can play. And then you still have talented tight ends that have finally developed. And we saw some last year as well, as Kitzelman was in and out with injury. Some of those young guys can play. So I think if you bring back Joey Aguilar, would I say that Tennessee's going to go and win the championship today on February 11th? Probably not, but I think it's a team that can be successful, that can compete in the SEC, and at least has the pieces to do so. I think you look at last year, and it's offensively a team that had a lot of wide receiver depth last year that got success for most of the season out of that room. And I think now those guys are a year older, and some of them approaching their money years and are ready to contribute. And I think having a guy like Joey Aguilar, who is ready to sling it, will help a lot too, because everybody knows the jump between Nico Imaliava and Joey Aguilar throwing the ball deep over the past 2 seasons. And a lot of that is just having trust in your wide receivers and trust from the quarterback position. And I think they would have that. I think you'd have a good offensive line, and I think you'd have a good stable of running backs that can give you a lot of production.
One thing that we wanted to ask about tonight, it's not actually Joey Aguilar related, but it happened yesterday with Michael Hunter going to the Rams. Didn't even get to coach, 3 weeks as Tennessee's cornerbacks coach. I mean, he was brought in to come and help revamp that room a little bit. He was on multiple recruiting visits these past few weeks, like the coaches going out and visiting players. Like, he was making his rounds on the West Coast with some guys out in LA, but apparently he was out in LA looking for houses, not actually recruiting cornerback prospects. So, Caleb, I guess a 2-parter here on that one. One, who do you think they are targeting for that spot on the coaching staff? And then 2, who is making the executive decision there? Obviously, Josh Heupel has to sign off on all this stuff, but we know Jim Knowles is supposed to be kind of the head coach for the defense as well.
Yeah, I would lean towards Jim Knowles having the final call on that one, Tucker. I think, when you bring in a guy like that, he's not a young coordinator. He's a guy who has experience, who's won championships, who's been around the block, knows a lot of people. I think he's somebody you can trust with that decision, and I think Josh Heupel would trust him with that. Now, do I think Josh Heupel sitting in on the interviews and making sure he's not bringing in some random? Probably, but I think Jim Knowles gets the final call at the end of the day on that. And the loss of Michael Hunter isn't good, especially after you just assembled your staff 3 weeks ago. But at the end of the day, I mean, I hate to bring up Tony Vitello, but he took the Tennessee job and then got another pro opportunity. It's not like he was out searching, I would say, for a pro opportunity, but a pro opportunity came up and he got that gig with the Rams and he took it. And you can't blame him for that. And I don't think anybody at Tennessee is genuinely upset by it, but I think you have to find a replacement. Luckily for Tennessee, with the role that he was the cornerbacks coach, but you still had Anthony Poindexter in charge of the secondary as your co-defensive coordinator. So I think that's good that while you lose a guy, it isn't good, but there's a little bit of damage control there that you lose a very focused, like hands-on cornerbacks coach when you had somebody overseeing the secondary. So they're able to go as business as usual right now and not really, lose a position coach that you can't really replace. I do think they need to go out and get somebody else who can recruit. Like you mentioned, Michael Hunter was on the road a lot and recruiting a good bit. I think you need to go get a recruiter. Who that is, honestly, at this point in the cycle, I have no idea because most guys are at other places. So I think Tennessee might have to poach somebody, and I'm sure Jim Knowles has contacts he can reach out to. But I think you need to get somebody who can recruit. Another guy, I mean, Michael Hunter brought pro experience to that staff, and I think especially today, college kids appreciate having people who know what it's like to be in the NFL. So ideally, if you could check 2 boxes, you want a good recruiter, I think, and somebody who has some pro connections that you can sell in the recruiting process of, hey, if you come to Tennessee, obviously we'll prepare you to play college football, but we've got coaches who could get you evaluated and put you on NFL teams' radars.
Yeah, I mean, we'll wait and see what happens, but I mean, it gets definitely hard to turn down opportunities from Sean McVay and the Rams.
Go coach Jalen McCullough. That's what he's going to do.
There's something about the Rams love Tennessee guys.
They might be drafting
apparently
Jermon
Tennessee
McCoy.
coaches too.
Could be drafting Jermon McCoy. Could draft Colton Hood. they're in the market for a corner, according to all these mock drafts. So unless they want to draft Matthew Stafford's successor now and go the same route that the Packers did with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, they too tend to like the Rams now. It was your Saints for a while that they liked, Caleb.
Hey, Alante's still down there. He's still hooping. I don't like all the rumors he's going to your Titans now. I don't like that. We have very few things going for us in New Orleans. And
bring me him and Juwan.
You can have Juwan. I'm a Saints fan too, Caleb.
No, not Juwan Johnson, Juwan Jennings.
Oh. I thought you were talking about Juwan Johnson. I was like, go ahead.
No, he can walk. But Alante Taylor and Alvin Kamara need to stay in New Orleans, please.
Yeah.
Full agreement. Caleb, where can everybody check out your stuff?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at CalebJarreau16. Obviously, baseball season starting up, football season never ends, whether it's in the courthouse or on the practice field, and then men's and women's basketball is going on. So I've got full coverage of all that over on Twitter, and all my stuff's on thedailytimes.com. And I usually, if I'm on top of it, I'll tweet it out as well. So, yep, that's me. So I appreciate you guys having me on, and everybody can find my stuff there.
Tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at pubs about the magic that Caleb brings on Daily Times Sports. And you can also check out his past appearances on the Paul Feinbaum Show from the old days of Back to School Week, and where he talks about the Tennessee Volunteers, especially against the Alabama Crimson Tide. All right there. Get him over the 2,000 followers, people.
Oh, yeah. Rack them up.
Thanks for taking the time.
Yep, I appreciate you
coming
guys.
on. Stay safe, stay warm. It's cold out. Man, and I just got to say, gentlemen, before we get to our next topics, we've got the Voice College Football merch store, of course, because, got to get those last second Valentine's Day gifts, of course. These look like some pretty good options. Especially for the guys in your life or the ladies in your life. The trucker hat, the dad hat, the T-shirt, the polo shirt, especially for spring break, if you want to get wasted away again in Margaritaville. The sweatshirt for those last days of winter, the game day mug, the can cooler, and the tumbler cup. We've got it all right here on vocfb/shop.fourthwall.com/collection/vocfb. We will send the merch store, put it in the link all right there. Oh, man. It's going to be a wild ride. We're only 200 days away from kickoff of 2026.
I did not realize it was 200.
Huh?
I did not realize it was exactly 200 days.
Yep. I'm ready to party. I'm ready to party. But Chris Marler had a little something on X, of course. He went over the most 2026 NFL Combine NFL drafts by school.
Yeah, the invites for the 2026 Combine were announced today. So we have the full list across the SEC for invites. Texas A&M leading the way with 13. Alabama with 12, LSU 11. Georgia and Oklahoma both coming in with 10. 9 for Florida, 7 for Texas, 6 for Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee. Ole Miss with 5, Carolina 4, Vandy with 2, and then Mississippi State with 1 invite. That's if you want to take a look at the roster talent at Starkville, there you go. Shout out to Brendan Thompson. Go set a 40 record.
He might.
He might. I hope so. That's going to be fun to watch. But we do have the full list of Combine players to go through as well. And Chris Marler, again, shout out to him for putting this together, had the full rundown. I thought it would be cool just to kind of go through these position by position. We're not going to name every single guy, but starting with the quarterbacks, 4 quarterbacks in from the SEC. Taylon Green, Arkansas, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, Pavia from Vanderbilt, and then Ty Simpson from Alabama. I know there was some talk about, Trinidad Chambliss, where is he at? And it's like he's actively trying to not go to the NFL. That's why he was not invited to the Combine, which that's going to be a weird situation. Both him and Aguilar at this point, that's a weird situation for them. I think I saw somebody talking about it would have to be supplemental draft at this point if they didn't get in. I don't know if that's legitimate or not. That'd be kind of be an interesting situation for them if they do not get granted an extra year of eligibility. But for the quarterbacks, I mean, just what are our thoughts about the 4 guys that are getting their invites to Indianapolis?
Taylor Green's going to be a fun one for those scouts to watch. I'll say that much. Just his speed is something that could be something for them to watch in the 40-yard dash if he chooses to participate in it. So that they'll like the measurables there. Also, long strider at 6'6". So
got a big arm too.
Yeah, big arm. So a lot of those things that the scouts will be looking for that could buy himself a little extra stock in the NFL draft. Although I think that the big question there is going to be the decision making, just because the turnovers were a little bit of a problem at Arkansas at times. As for the other 3 guys, I don't really know how they're going to stand out at quarterback, just because Pavia, because the combine is all about measurables, and I don't really know where he sticks out in that regard. You'll see it in his attitude during a game, and I think that's something that teams will value. Well, I guess the interview, the combine interviews, the availabilities will be where he stands out and tries to sell himself to teams, and then
I can see Pavia. Sorry, not to interrupt. I could see Pavia ruining it for himself in those interviews this week.
Yeah.
When it happens.
That is
he comes off as a turd, apparently.
Yeah, he can. As for the other 2 with Simpson and Nussmeier, I feel like a week like this does not help them, just because they're both dudes. Because again, we're talking measurables here. They're both a little bit smaller. Do we think the tiny hands argument will be thrown around for those guys potentially? I don't know for sure. Obviously, I have not measured their hand sizes, but I would not be surprised if one of those 2 fall into that category. I mean, obviously good football minds, but I don't know if they're going to necessarily blow away the scouts there with their performance on the field in the combine.
And kind of feel like maybe connections will prevail for Nussmeier somehow. Yeah. I don't know why, but it feels like that. And I know
he's been an NFL coach for so long.
Oh yeah, and you got Ty Simpson as well, because he's got some connections, but not quite as big as Nussmeier.
I feel confident Nuss will kill it in interviews because they're going to get Nuss on the whiteboard, and we talked about this. When we had Drew Beatty on to discuss how guys performed at the Senior Bowl, that the thing that stands out with Nuss compared to so many of these other quarterbacks coming out in this draft is he has the processing and mental side of the game that a lot of college quarterbacks don't have, which is something that when it comes to being successful in the NFL, eventually you have to have it. And Nuss does have that. So I think he can get up on a whiteboard and can break down the plays and break down coverages and understand where he has to go with the football. I think he'll impress in that manner. I think Simpson has some of that as well. It will be interesting, though, to see. I mean, look, it's not the same as throwing to receivers, routes on air is not the same as throwing against a defense. But seeing Simpson again after the way he finished last year will certainly be interesting to watch. Because obviously he faded down the stretch, was not the same player late in the season. Is there anything he can show at the combine? And again, he was not a senior, so he wasn't in the Senior Bowl. We didn't get to see those type of reps either. So what type of performance can he put on to kind of boost his draft stock? I mean, everybody has him as a first-round pick at this point. But can he fully lock it in that he is QB2 in this draft? Or could Nuss catch him? I think Green will probably be one of those guys some team falls in love with because of the measurables and the athleticism. I think Pavia is just sort of there as entertainment for a lot of us.
I mean, some people like to see a train wreck because it's like Pavia is great on the field, but it's just he has like a complete douche sometimes.
Running back, I think Mike Washington's probably going to really impress. It feels like his name has popped up a lot recently as a guy. Which he went under the radar playing at Arkansas, but he was a very good player for them. That's a guy I think has a chance to really stand out there.
Yeah, nice combination of both size and speed there because he goes about and it didn't look like it in person because obviously he's standing next to Taylon Green, but he's about 6'2", 225, which is a bruiser of a running back still. And they had an even bigger running back in Braylon Russell this past year. But that combination of size and speed and his ability in the pass catching game too, I think is something that those guys are going to be looking at. As for the other guys, I'm not nearly as sure because Faison, I think, was one that was because he was the guy that had to fight for his eligibility this past year, and it almost trickled into the season a little bit for South Carolina, if memory serves on that one. So McGowan was dealing with injuries for a lot of the season, so I guess this is a chance to, prove that he can go out there and potentially impress NFL scouts. Despite having to deal with some of those injuries, although all the reviews on him when he was at Kentucky were really, really good from people I've talked to. I'm curious to see what Jackson has to say about Jam Miller because I feel like Alabama's rush game was elevated when he was around, but he was dealing with injuries so much this past season that it kind of got hurt as a result of it.
I know that Jam Miller feels like he could be like a day 2 pick. I mean, he's obviously not a day 1 pick, but I'm feeling like I'm getting a day 2, day 3 vibe for Jam Miller. And whoever gets him for the 2026 draft is definitely going to be happy. But I want to see what Falson from South Carolina will do in the draft combine. That's a guy I'm definitely looking forward to seeing.
At the wide receiver spot, sorry, I zoned out for just a sec. I was checking something.
It's all good.
I mean, obviously, look, we mentioned him earlier, and I'm going to wrap my guy, Brendan Thompson. I'm really curious to see what he runs in the 40. I will say I'm wondering why. I still have not heard why he did not go to the Senior Bowl. He is from Texas, so maybe he was one of the guys impacted by the ice and the travel. So that's a possibility. I don't know for sure. Because even if he was in Starkville, I don't think the Starkville area really got impacted by ice with the ice storm. So I don't really know that whole situation if travel was impacted for him or not. There was a rumor floating around that he tweaked something. If that would be unfortunate because would that impact his running? But I'm really interested to see how he tests there. I think he has a chance to certainly stand out. Another guy we talked about with Drew, Kevin Coleman, I think is going to be a whole lot of fun to watch. I think Jeremy Bernard from Bama, just kind of an all-around good, consistent receiver, has a chance to have an interesting day. But I will say, it's not a list of SEC receivers that blows me away compared to some previous years.
I think the speed elements of some of these guys will be interesting to watch because you mentioned Brendan Thompson potentially breaking a 40 record. That's a possibility. Zachariah Branch is one that I'm very interested to see perform in the combine just because of everything we know about him, his shiftiness, his athleticism, and the speed too. He's got some strong breakaway speed as well. Another Georgia wide receiver on this list that's kind of interesting is Dylan Bell just because they used him in multiple facets of the offense. Like there was a time where he threw a touchdown pass in one of those Tennessee games a couple of years ago. So that's one that I'm kind of looking at. I didn't hear as much from him this year, but Barrion Brown was an intriguing prospect while he was at Kentucky, especially in the return game. I don't know how much, if at all, they'll be looking at that in the NFL Combine and how much that's going to translate into those drills. But he's a receiver that has been fascinating and flying under the radar for quite some time. And then the other one I'd say, and aside from Brazel, who I am somewhat selfishly interested in watching, but he's an interesting combo of size and speed. But Casey Concepcion is the other one that kind of jumps off the page to me just because of all the abilities, both as a return man, but then also just as a slot receiver.
Yeah, I think Concepcion, Coleman, maybe Brazel. I think that's probably I may be leaving some of that. That's probably your group of guys that you would look at. Because I think Bernard's a solid all-around player. I don't know if he's got any one trait that stands out. I think those are probably your guys that you look at as your true high ceiling receivers. I feel like you kind of mentioned everybody else. It's like a raw athleticism type thing.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily like Zach Branch. he's a fun player. He's also a gadget player. Like that's kind of what he's very much I'm going to take slants and screens. That's his game. So he probably needs a huge performance in the combine. Jackson, any thoughts on any of the receivers that are there?
Yeah, I want to see a lot of Concepcion from Texas A&M. And of course I want to see Bernard, but Brazil the second, I'm curious to see what he's going to bring because I think he can bring a lot of magic.
Brazel can definitely be a good player. Okay. Tight end room, I mean, the two guys for me that stand out, Oscar Delp and Daquan Wright. I know that Eli Stowers is going to get a ton of attention because of what he did as a receiver at Vanderbilt. There's a role for that in the NFL, but I'm interested. Like, I think guys like Delp and Wright especially did a ton as a receiver, but also has the physicality as a blocker. And Delp is a guy that like can be a big time blocker, which still matters at the tight end position. That I think Georgia probably should have gotten involved more in their passing game. Like, I think he's got a lot of untapped potential there. Those are two guys I'm really interested to see test at the tight end position.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with Delp. Bauer Sharp's another one that's kind of interesting. He's a bit of he's not as athletic as this guy, mind you, but it's the same principle with Evan Ingram where it's like he's basically just a big-bodied wide receiver at times. Like he's not known as much for his blocking ability just in the games that we got to see of him at Oklahoma and LSU. I'm not really gonna mention. Not going to be as interested in Miles Kitselman just because he kind of fell off over the course of the year for Tennessee. Plus, I just think he's one of those guys that's like the stereotypical coach on the field where it's like he's good for the glue of the program, but overall just not a guy that's going to wow you on the field or anything. But overall, I think you hit the nail on the head with Delp and Wright. Those are two that I'm very interested in watching. And then Stowers too, just because of all the attention he received this past season.
Yeah, I'm really thinking about who the Chiefs are going to be getting for successor of Travis Kelce. Because it's like, the Chiefs are always looking for a draft steal of some kind. And could it be Josh Cuevas? Could it be Kirker at Texas A&M? Could it be Kitselman at Tennessee, or is it somebody outside of the SEC? That's what I want to see, from the Chiefs for the 2026 draft, because they know they got to get another weapon for Patrick Mahomes to get his fourth Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, for sure. Eventually, they are going to have to find that replacement for Kelce. Offensive line, look, I'm not going to pretend that I know a ton of O-line play and guys that stand out. But I am going to be interested. Caden Proctor, because this is a guy that his entire career, there has been all the hype in the world. Big-time recruit coming out of high school, all the big deal with him at Alabama. He has been a huge physical specimen. He has been talked about as a first-round pick for the past 3 years. He is still being mocked as a first-round draft pick. The tape is not good on him. Like, he has not been a great performer. This obviously is not tape because this is a combine setting. But is he going to go ball out in the combine and still show, hey, man, like, I get it. I've got a lot of things to work on, but I've got the physicality and the athleticism that you want at your left tackle spot. I am so fascinated because he feels like one of those guys where there is the biggest disconnect between how he is viewed as a draft prospect and how he was viewed as a college player.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The size is there with him, but I just felt like you said, man, all the time that we were watching him, it's like he's getting blown up at tackle, and he was a high prospect coming in. We thought so much of him for the 3 seasons he was at Alabama, and it just wasn't as good as what you would have liked to see. But there are guys like that who, they have the innate ability, and then they're underwhelming as players. But I think other than him, and again, I'm not looking at too many guys specifically. Brailsford's another one that's of interest just because of how highly he's been thought of and nationally these last couple seasons. Like he was up for the trophy that I'm blanking on, the best center in America. What was it, last season, 2024? So that's one name that I'm looking at on this list. And then another one, and I'm saying this simply because I've seen him mocked in first rounds, is Monroe Freeling of Georgia, because he's continuously been mentioned in like the top 20 picks for those teams that need offensive linemen.
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to know who in a lot of the top 10 of the NFL draft is going to go for any one of these guys, honestly, because I want to see who's going to get who. Because, you got to get some protection one way or another for your QB. I know the Chiefs are needing some more protection to make sure nothing like what was happening to Mahomes is happening again for the future.
It's certainly something to look to. Defensive line, I'm going to be really interested to see Cassius Howell. Just was a terror off the edge this past year at the SEC. Mm-hmm. The SEC obviously has a lot of big-time pass rushers. All the guys from Oklahoma, like how do all of those guys perform? Zion Young from Missouri. I know Caleb Banks at Florida was a guy that really tore it up in the Senior Bowl, so can he continue to build upon that? But it does in a weird way feel like maybe it wasn't the same dominant year of defensive line play that we've seen in the SEC previously. But there's still some big time guys out there. Definitely interested to see how they perform.
Yeah, I'm with you on Cassius Howell just because he's been mocked as a first rounder for a while, making it in as an All-America selection. You have to be interested in a guy like that. Caleb Banks, another name that we continue to see thrown around these last few seasons, was banged up a little bit at Florida this year, but again, a chance for a guy that's been having to deal with some injuries to play in front of some of these NFL scouts. And then again, and one guy that's just been dominant these past two seasons, Mason Thomas. You can choose any of these Oklahoma guys, but I think he's just been one of the most impactful defensive linemen in the SEC the last two seasons. So curious to see what he can do in the combine.
Oh, man, somebody's going to be happy to snatch up Mason Thomas. It's going to be interesting because, he was like a total game changer throughout the 2025 season on defense.
Outstanding player for sure. Did you have any? Sorry, I didn't notice this. I was off. Did somebody say something? I was off the screen.
Nothing. Although now that I'm seeing him, Josh Josephs is another name that I'm again selfishly monitoring because he's a Tennessee guy. One that I think a lot of people had expectations for this year, but had to deal with some injuries. But he was one of the higher rated defensive recruits earlier on in Josh Heupel's classes, and I've seen him go as early as day 2 in some of these mock drafts. So curious to see what the scouts think of him as well.
Linebacker, Torian York from A&M is just a stud and a guy who will just go get after it. So I think he has a chance to shine. Harold Perkins, what do you do with him? Like that's the big I'm very curious to see what the thought process is on Harold Perkins coming out of this. And I know everyone's perspective is LSU grossly misused him. Brian Kelly ruined him. There's a lot of people whose opinions I value a lot who make it very clear it's not as simple as that, because the fact is, for as good as he is as a pass rusher, there's some very serious limitations in his game everywhere else. And when you hear 220 pounds, being an edge rusher is kind of not ideal. So what is the translation for him to the next level in the NFL? Can the NFL find a spot for him? But some good linebackers out of the SEC for sure.
Yeah, Perkins is definitely one just because he's such a Swiss Army knife for that defense, how they wanted to use him. And again, you talk about the misuse, and of course the injury hurt him really bad in 2024, turned him derailed a portion of his LSU career. The other one that I'm kind of interested in, and I don't really know how this guy translates to the NFL, is Owen Heineke from Oklahoma, because that's a guy that made a lot of plays this past year. Not the biggest guy that you'd see on the field, but another one of those stereotypical quarterback of the defense type players that you see from a linebacker. So maybe that's a guy that goes in and crushes it in the interviews. We'll see.
Oh yeah, I mean, like just like thinking about what Owen Heineke was doing for 2025. I mean, was huge. Because like looking back at the 2025 season, like dude was a baller, man. Like he's gonna be a draft steal for somebody. Oof.
At defensive back, Jamal McCoy, just because like this is a guy that obviously was going to be one of the top corners and was one of the top corners in the country in 2024. Ton of expectations. With obviously was injured, and this the whole thing is he going to come back and play? He ends up not playing. Still, I mean, Mel Kiper's got him as the number one corner in the draft. What does he look like in this setting? That's going to be a guy to watch for sure.
Be careful about listening to Mel Kiper.
I know Kiper's not great at this. Either way, McCoy is consensus like a top 3 corner, no matter where you look coming out of this draft. So like projected as a first round pick currently.
Yeah. Hood is the other one that I'm looking at from Tennessee. And again, both of these are Tennessee's only representatives in the defensive back section of this combine list. But Hood is a guy that has been flirting with first round mock drafts for a while. In fact, a lot of people have said, hey, this is a first round guy that can go as high as like a top 20 pick. So interested in what they have to say there. Will Lee from Texas A&M is another guy that we heard a lot about in these past 2 seasons because he started at Kansas State, but then joined forces with Elko there in 2024. So that's one that I'm looking forward to seeing. And then Jalen Kilgore, part of some of those really good South Carolina defensive backfields. And again, maybe it's just because he played on South Carolina and they were 4-8, but maybe a guy that kind of fell under the radar a little bit this past season.
AJ Halsey from LSU, another name. I mean, the SEC going off again. I'm just going off of Kiper, so I guess take it with a grain of salt. But doesn't really have any highly projected safeties out of the SEC. Halsey is the one he's got, so that's going to be a guy to watch for sure.
Oh, agreed. And I want to see what Dalen Everett can bring in the draft combine. I want to see him bring out some magic like he was for Georgia in 2025.
Yeah, I think, Everett, we heard, didn't necessarily have the best Senior Bowl showing. I believe was the reports that Drew gave us there when we had him on last week. So Everett will definitely be a guy to see. Like, can he improve upon that at the combine? Do we have any thoughts on the specialists that are there?
Brett Thorson is fun. He's a heck of a punter. So good for him for getting that opportunity. That's about all I have on specialists, though.
We're all just waiting for Lucas Carnero to go to the NFL.
Yeah,
to go watch him. Honestly, why I want Ole Miss to continue having a kicker who can hit from 70 yards, but watch that guy go tear it up in the combine. That'll be a ton of fun. But yeah, NFL Combine coming up, not that much longer away. We'll definitely have content to get into that.
And we will definitely be making sure we've got some guests lined up for y'all all right here on SEC at the Voice of College Football, as we'll be taking you through a wild ride through the 2026 offseason all right here. Well, gentlemen, is there anything else we missed out tonight on, or no?
Not that I can think of. It's been kind of quiet.
Yeah, not any breaking news in particular. There was only one thing that I saw today with Tennessee relative to breaking news. They did get a quarterback commitment, but it's only a 3-star commitment, so a little bit of a lower rated guy than what we're accustomed to.
Well, one thing's for sure, we'll definitely be keeping our eye on recruiting news all right here on SEC at the Voice of College Football. And if we see anybody that's making their commitment coming soon, you can bet your bottom dollar that we will be covering it all right here, doing a little watch party. It could be here on the SEC channel. It could be on the Alabama, Tennessee, or even the main channel. It's a possibility. Yeah. We'll keep you all updated all right here. We'll be finding out whenever who is committing when. Commitment dates are coming soon from each of these 2027 recruits, especially Monshawn Sells. Well, Andrew, What magic are you cooking up on Mississippi State Voice College Football, good buddy?
So we've been doing a lot of diving into Mississippi State's roster, kind of talking about most recently have they finally gotten back to having an SEC level roster, which they've not had Jeff Levy's first 2 years. Is that something they finally have turned around? Talking a lot about the portal class, talking a lot about the players that have come in. Did a depth chart projection. I can't talk right now. So it'll be more of that stuff moving forward, starting to get ready for spring and kind of hitting some positional previews. So if you're wanting to get an early look at the Bulldogs, we got you covered over there at Mississippi State at the Voice of College Football.
Tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at Publix about the magic that Andrew brings, all right there on Mississippi State at the Voice of College Football, including tomorrow night on the Mississippi State Call-In Show at 7 p.m. as he takes your calls discussing the fighting Mississippi State Bulldogs. And you can also check out the magic they create on Maroon and White Nation. Tucker, you're a magician all over the place. What magic do you cook over where exactly, for those who don't know, besides Tennessee at the Voice of College Football?
Yeah, so I cook magic in a few different places. So one, as Jackson mentioned, Voice of College Football, we've got plenty to discuss there. And a lot of the things that we're going to discuss there here in the next few weeks are going to be things that we've actually just discussed on this show with Joey Aguilar, that court case, whatever the ruling may be there, maybe a celebratory live stream if he gets that eligibility waiver approved. We'll have to wait and see on that. As I mentioned, 3-star quarterback commit today in Derek. Oh, man. Why am I blanking on the kid's name? Brandon Derrick. That's the guy's name. But you got him committed, and we're following all these commitment dates very closely, and visits over on Vols Wire. Lots of visits right now. The guys setting their visits to, it's Derek Baker. My brain is fried. I am so sorry. Derek Baker is the 3-star quarterback. But yeah, covering him today over there on Vols Wire. We're going to talk about him next week on Tennessee at the Voice of College Football, Tennessee Volunteers Live, myself and Jordan Binkley. Let's see what else we got cooking. Baseball season right around the corner, as you know. As Andrew knows very well, with Mississippi State, they need something to look forward to.
A lot of baseball content coming to Maroon and White Nation.
Yeah, lots of stuff coming up on Vols Wire as well. Probably have some prospect rankings out soon on both college and Vols in the pros as well, stuff that I'm doing. And then you can also find me on College Football HQ on Sports Illustrated. Multiple different outlets that we've got, or multiple different teams that I'm covering over there on CFBHQ on SI. We've got all kinds of different stories about just about everybody in college football, all different levels of it.
Yep. I mean, you're like one of the busiest guys on the planet, man. Like, you're on Tennessee at the Voice College Football, SEC at the Voice College Football, Vols Wire at USA Today, and CFB HQ on SI. Like, man, you want to talk about a magician? That guy Tucker is a freaking magician right there. He just goes bibbity bobbity boom. There we go. Tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers of pubs about the magic that Tucker Harlan brings. All right there on Tennessee at the Voice College Football, right here on SEC at the Voice College Football, and on CFB HQ on SI and Vols Wire at USA Today for some recruiting news. And you can also check me out right here on SEC at the Voice College Football, of course, but also on Alabama at the Voice College Football with Trevion Ware and Jeffrey Only Talk Sports, including tomorrow night for tomorrow night's edition of the Alabama College Show, as Jeffrey and I take your calls, as we'll be getting, as it's going to be 199 days until 2026 for everybody, but 206 days until 2026 starts for the Crimson Tide. But also, we'll keep you updated on some upcoming news all right there, but also 269 subs away from the magic number 1,000 on my personal channel on Jackson Johnson 979 at the Jackson, where I've got some upcoming episodes on the way, just getting everything all prepared. But for more updates, what I've got going on SEC at the Voice College Football, Alabama at the Voice College Football, or the Jat saying, or some articles I'm writing on BOCFB.com at thevoicecollegefootball.com. Check me out on Jats BOCFB on /Twitter and on Instagram at that's Jackson Johnson 54390. And with that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see y'all next Monday night and next Wednesday night. And like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you never miss no video whatsoever. And we will see y'all soon. Take care, everybody.